So I've got composition clown on this side, and I drug this over here so I have a second layer which I can actually draw on. I have paint here. If I double click it, it opens up this window here. If for some reason I lose it, then I need to go paint here, double click that. The second window shows up like that. So now I can draw on this and see how it will affect all the layers below here. This is the clown composition. See that? This is layer paint here. Layer paint here. So it kind of helps you to see how you could draw on here and have it show up on your other stuff that you're actually drawing it on. So let me go under here under constant, and once I draw this like this, it's going to make a shape under the effects on that layer that I'm painting on. I'm using my paint tool right here. I'm going to open up paint, and here's that brush I just drew. See how it's kind of starting out here where I had the cursor, or the current time indicator is what it's called, and it drew it clear across, and it's going to stay there and it will not change. I can even move it over a little bit. This drawing I just drew will not change because it's constant. It's going to be constantly there. I could change it by turning on and off stopwatches, and I'll show you that in a minute. So that's the most boring one. Let me hit delete on that. And we'll go on to the next type of brush, which is instead of constant, right on. And what this is going to look like is if like a hand wrote it. So here we go. Let's jump back to the beginning this time so it'll start drawing from here. I'm just going to draw this shape like this. Boom. As soon as I do that, if you look down here, I have a new brush that was created. It has a dot here and a dot here, which tells me that between here and here, this thing is going to draw itself on just the way I did a second ago. So if I scroll over it, you can see it's starting to draw itself on. I'm just scrolling over it there. I can also hit play here, and it will show you on the left how it will look because I've got that window selected right now. So that's how that will draw on, which is pretty neat. I really like that. If I don't like how it's doing it, I can change it a little bit here. I can speed it up. I hit space bar, I open this up, I grab this little keyframe under stroke options here. I can bring it in like this. I can also grab this first keyframe and go Control C on Windows and jump over here and go Control V, and it'll draw itself back off again too. So here's what it'll look like. It draws itself on and it draws itself off. So that's draw on. That's a really pretty right on, kind of a pretty cool way of drawing your lines here. So let me get rid of that and show you one more setting here. I'm going to hit delete and I'm going to draw another one. Now we're going to go from right on to single frame. And what that's going to do is it's just going to add one frame to my timeline here. So let's start it kind of closer to the beginning, and I'll draw like that. And if I look down here under paint and under this brush and I go plus plus plus, there's just one little frame drawn here. Now I can go in and draw more stuff and it will show up on another layer. So that's kind of a way to draw a number of shapes. See how they're all stacked on top of each other? Now if I want to add to brush 1's shape, I can select brush 1. I can turn on its path here, and I can do what's called page down on my keyboard and draw another shape, and see how it made a new keyframe and it's ready to make another shape here. So I can just start drawing on that, and now that I have this layer selected here, I can do page down, draw, page down, draw, page down, draw. If you want to see what you're drawing before, you actually have to stretch this guy out. Let me show you that. It's pretty neat. I can grab this end here, stretch it way out, and then it'll kind of keep showing me the keyframe before when I do the page down. There's what was there before, and I just redraw it, and that line will disappear and the new line takes over. Page down, page down, page down, page down. So now I'm doing a frame by frame animation. Page down, page, 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 page down. Draw it again. See, it's making like a little more space in between, so you don't have to draw every single frame maybe if you don't want to. Okay, let's see what that looks like. I'll come back here to the beginning. I'm going to hit minus, minus, minus to kind of zoom out a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to drag this over so I can see what's going on here in the beginning. I'm going to say I really don't want to watch this whole thing. I just want to watch this area I drew on. I'm going to hit the play button. Because this composition is selected, it's showing you all the different lines I've drawn on. So in a relatively quick period of time, you can draw at least one line over and over again. It's kind of like each line is its own line. So you would have to draw, if you want to do eyes or something, they would have to be on another layer, like here. See, you need brush 2 and 3, and you'd have to animate those too. So it really only animates like one line, just kind of a drag. That's one thing I don't like very much about it. If you really want to get drawn, you should go into Adobe Animate as well. It has a really good way of drawing with onion skinning, they call it, so you can see through all the layers. Okay, but nevertheless, it's still kind of fun that you can do some of this stuff here. So that's single frame, frame by frame, but if you drag it out and use that page up and page down button on your keyboard, you can add in new keyframes so that it becomes frame by frame. So from single frame, we can also go to custom, and that's like, how I jumped over like 7 or 8 frames sometimes. You can set it right here so that it jumps 5 frames every time when you draw. So then you can get on here and start drawing little things like that, and it makes a new layer here, and then I can come over here and draw another one. It makes another layer here, 4 frames long. See that? So that's kind of interesting. You can also remember, grab these and move them around and have them flicker on and off. You can drag it out if you want. Like, for example, let me go under brush number 5, turn on the path. I can stretch it out now. If I can get it at the end, boom, there it goes. Stretch it out as far as I want. I've got this dot here, but then I do page down so that it jumps to the right. It shows me my path. I can draw it. Page down, redraw 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 it. So it's getting smaller and smaller. Oh, it's so small I can't even draw on it anymore. All right, now it's a dot. Okay, so let's watch what I've got here. I'll hit play. It's rendering it all out. So here's a whole bunch of interesting, kind of almost like scratch film effects that you'll see in old scratch films like Stan Brakhage and other abstract films from that era. So ultimately, the best way to do a frame-by-frame animation in After Effects that I found is you click on the layer, you double-click it, you make sure you're drawing on it, you come over to where you want to start drawing, you minus out enough that you can see your work area so you know kind of where you're drawing, and then you go under your, up here to my paint settings, and I choose, instead of duration custom, I would choose duration constant, and I would draw my first frame like this, and it'll show up under the effects paint as paintbrush number 1. I can open that up. I can turn on the path so that it's animatable, so to speak, and you can't just start drawing, but you actually have to advance to the next frame. See how it just redrew that frame right there? Let me do that again. All of a sudden it changes that, but it's just redrawing the same frame. So that's where I use the page down, which moves to the right, page down, then I redraw it like this, and it takes over so that the path actually changes between here and here. See how that's changing? So that's kind of neat. Then I can jump over here, change it again. Different things you can do like that in order to advance it frame by frame. So I can either click here and draw it, or I can just advance by hitting page down. And then as it's looking pretty good, I can pull this over and I can go under my preview up here, which has been minimized right now. So play it, and that's what it will look like as it advances. So I think that's pretty neat. I could even jump farther over and get rid of the squiggle altogether and just make it into a square like that. And it will change it from the squiggle and morph it into the square. So that's kind of neat. The only drawback is it just does it line by line. You can't really do 2 or 3 lines on this one line. I mean, you have to start with a new brush. So if I deselect this brush, click off of it, and then grab my paintbrush and draw something else over here, it makes a new drawing layer. See right here? So that will just be there constantly and it'll stay there the whole time. I can pull it over. It won't change unless I get in and turn on my stopwatch on it like I did earlier. Boom, there we go. And I hit page down and redraw it, and page down and redraw it, and page down and redraw it, page down. And now I have an animation going again. Let me rewind it to the beginning and hit play. So here's one more method that I like to use. I hit my paintbrush and I turn it onto single frame, and you just make tons and tons and tons of brush strokes. And you can kind of progress through them and manage them as you go. You can have hundreds of brush strokes. So let's try something like that out real quick. I have this clown that I brought in here. I have my brush. Come over here and change this red color to something that's more like the hair that I actually have on my drawing that I did in Illustrator. I'm going to hit OK. It's kind of a nice blood red color. I'm going to change the brush here so that instead of constant, I'm just going to do a whole bunch of single frames. And once I draw it, I can extend it. Okay, I'll set my brush up parameters up here a little bit. I've got that color that I picked up here. And I'm ready to roll, so I'll actually use a single frame setting. And I'm going to just draw some red hair on here. Just really fast like that. And a red nose like that. So already that's starting to do some animation over here. Now if I look under effects here and under paint, I see I have two brushes. One is the hair and one is the nose. So I can also turn that layer's opacity down, do a lot of weird, interesting things with blending modes, as they call them in After Effects. Okay, so I have this clown here that I've kind of thrown into a new composition. Let me double click him. I'm going to pull him up so I can draw on him a little bit. Grab my brush here. I kind of tweaked my brush a little bit to make it the way I want it. Maybe I want to make it a little smaller than that. So I might turn down the diameter of it a little bit more. So I have a smaller brush here. I went in, I changed the color by clicking on this, got my little eyedropper and chose a color that's much closer to the red of his hair. So I had this nice red color up here. And so now what I'll do is kind of get to the beginning of my layer here. I'll pull in my work area so that I'm only working on about 5 seconds when I go to preview it in a minute. The preview's up here on this stack here. In fact, I might just move this out of there and put it like way over here somewhere. Where could I put it? Maybe over on this edge right there. So now I have a nice preview all set by itself over there. So let me just draw on this. I'm here at the beginning here. You can see I have, I'm going to make sure there's no brushes in here so I could start out from scratch. This is on paint. And I'm going to use this paint effect here. It's draw out some hair and draw out a nose like that. If I select the first brush, that's his hair. If I select the second brush, that's his nose. Now I can also go plus 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 and zoom in, and you'll see it's only one frame long. So I'm going to select the paint here. I'm going to change the color to black by clicking here and choosing a black down here. And now I'm going to use my brush a little smaller this time and just draw kind of the shape of his head here like this. Some mouth. That's all in one line. Let's do another line here. Or his eyes. At that point I can just move on to my next frame and either redraw things or change them slightly, like pull this out here. See how I'm pulling out the ends? That's what I want to do right there. Click on it, pull out the end. And I really want to get under here now and tell it I want to be animatable by turning on these path stopwatches, jumping over a frame and drawing things again. So let's do black first. Like this. Mouth. Of course, you probably want to take a little longer than I am. Now it's starting to draw so many layers. See all the new layers it's drawing? So it actually, I could do it, you know, one by one here if I select each layer and draw it. And I could label them and everything if I wanted to. But for now, I'm just going to keep drawing frame by frame. Draw it again here. You can always go back and add more things to it if you want. All right, so I've got a lot of black here. Let me jump another frame over. So it's just creating tons and tons of layers, but that's probably all right if if you're just going to draw it quickly like this. Now I can go back over here and change the color to red again. So there's an eyedropper here. I can select it. And I can come over here and select the red again if I want, and redraw his hair wherever I am on this timeline. It'll draw it right there for me. And I will play through this and see what it's starting to look like. Oh, I moved that over here. Let me hit play. So there's some cool things starting to happen there. Kind of like that. That could be an interesting little loop if I pulled this over here. Let me hit play again. That could be almost like a GIF. Sort of kind of freaking out a little bit there. We've got all these brushes. See all the brushes I've drawn, tons of them. Doesn't really matter. They're all vector. They don't take much space. Maybe I'll just take the whole effect here, the whole paint effect, and copy it. And let's make a layer new solid that's just pure white. All right, there it is, and I'll hit paste. And now I have just the outline without the clown. Let's see what that looks like. So these are all my lines without the actual clown in there. He looks kind of like a skull, you know. The other thing I could do is pause that, turn on this kind of like transparencies here and go through these. Some of these could be really interesting in how they blend in with each other. Here's overlay, color dodge. You know, there's a lot of weird things you could do with these transparencies here. So let's do that, and then I'll turn this layer down. I'll hit T and turn down the opacity of that layer so that all the lines that I created will be showing up more. Let's find, there we go. See, that's like screen, light, and darken. I'm going to go through those real quick by hitting Shift plus minus, Shift or plus minus, just to see if any of them look cool. That one looks cool. That's classic. See how it's changing it down below? So that I'm going through all the various transparency modes here. See what we find. Some of them are going to be really cool. Some of them might not. This is more like experimental filmmaking. You know, I can even do one more layer here. What's something that contradicts this? Let's do layer, new, solid, and just make this thing really dark, weird, and black. Let's put like this kind of dark reddish color in here and hit OK. That's going to cover everything up. But now I'm going to do my transparency modes right here again. See, blending modes, they call them. Hit minus on that and see what happens. See if we get some cool effects. That's stencil alpha. I could also turn it down to 50% and have it kind of blend in a more interesting way. So we're getting some pretty cool, strange and haunting effects here. You can't always draw on what you expect you can draw on. It's a little weird. So double click it and it'll usually be right here inside of this. So I just drug it out. So I have two windows, one where I draw and one where I see how it looks where I draw it basically. Okay, there's something that you might want to experiment with a little bit. So then I'm just going to do a couple things like here's Cassie, something that might be fun for you with your snowboarding. So I click on this brush tool, right? And then once I do that, if I can minimize my zoom crap and get it out of the way, and stick it down here. You guys can't see it, but it's there. So there's two windows I had opened up, which I kind of showed by going through window, workspace, paint here. See that? So if you want to paint and draw, this would be a really good kind of space to start with. And it actually breaks the windows out for you, like I mentioned a little bit earlier. So there's two things I want to use when I'm doing my painting. One is choosing and changing and modifying my brushes. And you can even save a brush. Like if I like this brush, you know, here, I actually do kind of like this brush, but I don't like how wide it is. So I can make it a lot smaller like that. And then I don't quite like that angle. It seems like a little much to me. And roundness and softness, basically, I could chill that out a little bit. So there's a lot of different things you can change to make the brush the way you want it. And then I can hit this, which will save the brush. See that? I can call it VM number 1 or whatever. And now it shows up right here, VM number 1. So if I ever lose that brush, I can come back to it, all right? So there's some tips about making the brushes. Also, I have this little cheesy Wacom tablet. I don't know if you could see it. So already, I mean, I can't draw over here. That's the actual composition. So I have to double click it and now I can draw. It's just a little weird. I don't really like that. So the other thing you could do is like have the see-throughness and the flow and all this depend on your pen. If you're using your pen on your computer, for example, Cassie, you might be able to change, you know, just the pen pressure, how hard I push. And then when I draw, you know, I'm getting some pretty nice little lines, different kinds of lines. So I just drew that, right? And see how it's showing up on the original. That's good. That's an indication that everything's working. It goes under effects, it goes under paint, and then you'll see if I hit plus, you start to see the brush that I drew. See the brush right here? So that's what I just drew. I drew 1 frame of paint. And then if I click to the next frame, it's not there any longer. All right, so that's what I've drawn so far. So that's what I have set is called single frame. So every time I draw, it's going to make a frame. See how there's like a bunch of line in there too? So it's actually creating like a path. So you could jump over here to the next frame and draw, like, let's point an arrow at him because I see that a lot. In this incident, what you do is you would like kind of click off of it and just keep drawing like this, and then jump to the next frame and draw it again like that, and jump to the next. See how it's drawing frame by frame down there in the timeline. Okay, and then here's another more, once you get comfortable with this, then what you do is you use page down on your keyboard, page down, so you don't have to keep going down there. See how it's starting to get faster now? Page down. Those are terrible arrows, but you get the point, right? Page down. All right, so I can use page down to create these. And then here's what it will look like. Let me zoom out. So that's very few frames, but nevertheless, it's an animation. That's only 10 frames long, right? But I can make that into a loop or something, couldn't I? So I've got my previewer over here. Let me hit play. So see the arrow that I drew? It's not showing up over here anymore because now it's previewing it down here. See this? So you can focus either on this window where it's actually done, or you can focus on drawing on this level. All right, so that's very spastic, kind of, you know, frame by frame. Let me show you another way to do it now. So what I could do is let me just delete all these, and I'll show you 2 or 3 other ways of doing it. So that's one way of doing it. That's a single frame, which is fun. I like that a lot. So constant, this basically means if I draw it, from where I draw it through this work area and on, it'll just be the same thing forever. So here we go. I'll draw a little nicer arrow. And look, it just makes it for the whole timeline constant. It's going to be constantly there. And as I scroll through, it doesn't change. So that's another method you could use. And I'm going to show you like another method that might help you even more in a second. It's more fun kind of. So I'm going to undo that. That's called constant. Write on is really kind of neat. Check this out. So write on, what it does is it will start and it'll kind of be like as if you wrote it on the screen. So let me do that. Let me write something here in cursive. I'll write CLOWNS. All right, so I just wrote that, right? And you're like, oh, what's crap? What happened here? I can't see it. If you go minus, 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 you'll see that there's 2 dots here. See that? 2 keyframes. And you can open this up a little bit more. I'm going to grab my work area over to here. And under stroke options, it has a start and it has an end. Let me hit scale on this and shrink it down a little bit. So here it is again. Let me show the preview again. So it's writing on just how I wrote it on. Clowns. That's green down here, so that's the actual speed. So if you don't like it, which I don't like it, it's taking way too long. So I would go under Effects, Paint. It's always under Effects, Paint. It's under Brush. And that's the only thing I don't like about this too, compared to Adobe Animate, is look how many levels you have to go down to find the thing you want to do. So I would rather this draws on really quick. So I just scooted over that right keyframe, and now look how fast it draws on. Isn't that kind of better? All right, so that's right on, and I'll make something else here. Custom is basically frame by frame, but you can, right here, there's a little blue number. You could say skip 8 or 6 frames or 5 or 4 frames. You don't need 24 frames of animation. Most times people will do 12 frames per second of animation, or instead of 30, they'll do 15 or 10 frames of animation, because you don't need that many drawings, right? It just takes forever. So that will just make it faster for me. I want to make sure I'm not selecting brush 1, because it'll write over the top of it, right? So let me click off of it, click on that layer, and I'll do my arrow here like I did before. And then, so notice here, I'm zoomed in pretty close here. Notice how it's now 1, 2, 3, 4 frames long. That's all it is. It's a little different from frame by frame, because you can just do 4 frames, that's all. All right, so I could keep kind of jumping over. This might be kind of worse, because let me see if I can do, if I do page down, it's jumping frame by frame. That's going to take a while. So 1, 2, 3, 4, draw, 1, 2, 3, 4. But it might not be quite so spastic anymore, because the arrow won't be quivering quite as much as it was earlier when I just did every single frame, right? So there's an example. Let me hit minus to zoom out a little bit, and then I'll hit my little play button to render it. Make sure it's not selected, because here's what happens if you forget to advance and have it selected. Let me just show you, because it's frustrating. This is probably something that'll happen. It happens to me a lot. So let's say I draw this arrow here, and then I draw this arrow again, and I draw this arrow again. You know, it's like, not, see how it's not advancing? It's just sort of like laying them on top of it. You could go like this, I guess. Scooch them over. I've got my left hand pushing page down, and my right hand is drawing, and then I do. But see how even there, that was frustrating. Did you see what happened there? If I have brush 3 selected, it redraws it over and over. I'm like, oh, cool, I got it. Hey, what happened? Hey, what happened? Hey, what happened? You know, it's just like, it's redrawing the same thing over and over again, okay? So that's bad. So you have to sort of get used to hitting page down, page down, page down, page down, because I'm doing 4 frames, right? Then drawing again, page down, page down. See, even then it's not working. See how it's jumping over as I draw it? So if that starts happening to you, you're going to get pissed, and you're going to do a bunch of drawings and nothing's going to happen. It's because you have it selected over here. All right, so this is probably my favorite method of all, but it's tricky. What you do is you also remember you can change the color mode. I didn't mention that, but you could do overlay and multiply and all that. So remember, you can do that while you're painting, but I tend to do it when I'm done. You go, instead of custom 4 frames or single frames or right on, it would probably work with right on, but I'm not going to do it with that. I'm going to do it with constant here. So I get on constant, which is the most boring one that doesn't seem like it would do any good, right? So what I'll do is I'll do this arrow here, and it's showing up, it's looking good, and it's constant. If I scroll over it, it's not changing at all, see? But check this out. If I go under the brush, what do I have? Looky there. So I'm going to turn that on. There's other, you can animate everything. I mean, I can even animate the color. I might try that. I can animate where it stops and starts. That's the right on. You know, if you start at 0 and end at 0, and then later on you start at 0 and end at 100, it'll draw itself on. So I can change all sorts of stuff here. That's kind of cool. So you might want to play with that a little bit. So now that I've got the path on though, I can go in here and I can start to change the path frame by frame. So see how it got the little line, and it's looking, pretty good. So let me go page down, page down, page down, and redraw this. It just changed it. Did you see that? This used to be constant, and now it's starting to do a frame by frame. Page down, page down, page down. Draws it again. See, changed it a little, right? Page down, page down. Page down, page down. See how much faster this is? All right, so that's my favorite method there. I did constant, and then I turned on the path stopwatch, and then every time I redraw it, it makes a new keyframe. Hit my space bar, and that's what it looks like. It has more of a flow to it. That's kind of nice. I can do copy those keyframes, paste, paste, come over here, paste. So all of a sudden I'm pretty much done, right? So now I have this arrow that'll last quite a long time. I just copied and pasted all those keyframes. So I just changed the color. Let me change the color again here. So that might be kind of fun, right? Change the color. Come over here, change the color to something else. Save it, play it. Let's see what I've got here. So that's kind of fun. See how, did you see it change colors real quick there? Right now it's just there, right? It's constant, but I can force it to be right on. And the way you do that is you look under stroke options and you turn on the start and end time recording, basically, right? And you basically say back, so in the beginning, I would probably have the end at 0. See how it's unwriting itself? Did you guys see that? So then I could jump later. Let's say I jump later to about half a second. And then I'll say, all right, keep start the way it is, but the end do 100%. So that's basically right on, right? See how it's writing itself on again? So that's kind of neat. You can actually do some weird things with that. Like I can start to make it really weird. Like let's go to here and back it down a little bit. And then let's go to here and go back to 100%. And let's go to here and change this to a little bit. Let's change it. So it could kind of write itself on and write itself off. Stuff like that. You can have it do like a lot of weird things. Just playing around here. All right, and then I could take all these keyframes and copy them and sort of paste them on there in different weird ways. Let me see what this does. This is just a lot of the things I do are just experiments, just playing around. So now it's gonna like probably flicker a lot, kind of write itself and unwrite itself. Let's see what it looks like here. But look, I like that. See how it's kind of flashing clowns and drawing and redrawing and undrawing and stuff like that. So that's the drawing that I wanted to show you guys.